Good evening. The February 27th meeting of the City Council will come to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Hidakaris.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Sufferton.
Here.
Councilmember Ravel.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Present.
We have a quorum here and are prepared to do our work. The first item on the agenda is my public announcements and proclamations, of which there are none. The next item on the agenda is the city manager's public announcements.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Clerk Mendoza. I am pleased to introduce Edgar Cano, our Director of Public Works, to announce a special award the city is in receipt of.
Thank you very much, City Manager Stowe. Good evening, council members, Mayor Biss, Clerk Mendoza. My name is Edgar Cano. I'm the Public Works Agency Director. And today I'm pleased to present this 2023 Special Achievement Award that we received from the Illinois chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies for our Central Street Bridge Replacement Project. These awards are given to projects worthy of special recognition in engineering excellence, and the bridge at Central Street was chosen due to its complexity as well as its design. We are proud to say that during the entire construction phase, we were able to maintain both pedestrian and two-way vehicular traffic so as to minimize the impact to the surrounding hospital, fire station, Canal Shores, and Ryan Fieldhouse. The new bridge now has 10-foot wide walkways as well as 4-foot wide bike lanes and a beautiful, beautiful parapet wall with lighting. So lastly, I just want to recognize the hard work put in by Senior Project Manager Sat Nagar, as well as the rest of the engineering and maintenance staff that work with Stanley Consultants. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Congratulations to Edgar and Sat and the whole Public Works team on a job very, very well done. The next item on our agenda is communications from the city clerk.
We got several emails today from different people. The first is from Janine Sank in favor of the animal shelter, wants the council to consider how much the animal shelter has helped families who have needed it for food or shelter when they've been ill or they've had some family emergency. From Fernanda Perez, also in favor of the animal shelter. From Damian Feliciano, in favor of the ETHS rooster. Steve Hart, he's reaching out in favor of the animal shelter as well. From Leslie Williams, opposing the approval of contract with CCC Holdings, Inc. From Judy Malik, asking the council, letting the council know they've been waiting for a Nicholas Cummings Corporation Council to deposit a check for Harley Clark. There's no, sorry.
And it's Judy Malik.
Oh.
She's a 8th Ward.
And Chuck at Hasinger.org. They're the party in favor, responsible for investigating the animal shelter expansion, and they want details why the 13 square foot recycling center has not been forwarded as an alternative to the proposal. Melissa Hames, vote yes for the animal shelter. Jane Roth, also highly in favor of the animal shelter. Beck Walensky, writing the council to vote to approve the contract with TC Holdings. Mike Moran, also writing in support of funding for the proposed animal shelter building. Gabriela Alvarado Moran, writing to ask you to support building a new Evanston animal shelter. Sharon DeVera, in favor of approving the animal shelter as well. Vicky Segling, lifelong Evanstonian in the 8th Ward, has volunteered for several years in the animal shelter, also in favor of the animal shelter. Tim B., longtime supporter of the shelter, asking for the approval of the animal shelter expansion. And Christina A. Beckman, lifelong resident of the 4th Ward, volunteers with the community with CATS director at animal shelter, also in approval of the animal shelter. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clerk. This brings us to public comment. And I believe this is the busiest night of public comment that I've presided over. So there are actually in excess of 45 people who've signed up between in person and online. And so that means that everyone will be given 1 minute, which I recognize does not feel like a long time, but it is actually a little bit more than what the rules say I'm allowed to give you guys. So the time will be set to 1 minute. As always, we'll begin with those who signed up in person to speak in person. Councilmember Reed?
I'm sorry, I was going to let you finish your statement. I do wonder, Mayor, are we going to, our rules say that public comment should be 45 minutes. Are we going to enforce that 45-minute limit? I would suggest that we do.
So, so by dividing, so the way that I handle that is to divide, as provided for in the rules, I divide the number 45 by the number of people who've signed up. I get an answer. I set the timer. So there's three ways in which it could fail to be 45 minutes. One is friction, people sort of taking time to take their turn. One is me being less aggressive than I might at cutting people off, which I think lesson being learned gradually. And one is me being a little bit generous with a rounding with the math. So like probably I'm supposed to give people like 54 seconds, now I'm going to give them a minute. So those are 3 ways in which could inch over 45 minutes. If folks want me to be more aggressive, I would take that seriously. I'm just trying to balance between the time and the desire to hear from everybody.
Thank you.
So we'll begin with those who signed up in person to speak in person, but we'll begin with a particular subset of them. There's a collection of, I believe, ETHS students who have come here to speak on behalf of Tyrone the Rooster, and I think they have some coordinated public comment. And so if I would, without calling on you all, if I could just ask you all to be the first group of public commenters, because my understanding is you wanted to speak back to back, and then I'll cross you off the list and move on with the rest of the public commenters. And please introduce yourself by name at the beginning of your comment.
Hello, I'm Agnes Bijolheims. I'm an ETHS student.
I'm Jalen Fanyu.
Okay, well, I would like to say that having a rooster at ETHS for the urban agriculture class adds to the full experience of being in urban agriculture, and I don't necessarily know how I would have the full experience unless we have the rooster, and the flock of hens would be much safer with a rooster, and the rooster's name was Tyrone, by the way, in case you wanted to know.
Hi, I'm Ellen Fear. I teach at Evanston Township High School. I'm one of the urban ag teachers. And our program is based on hands-on experiences so that our students can learn what it's like to grow your own food and have food sovereignty. And they may be growing food outside of Evanston and someday have their own flock, and it's good for them to understand how the rooster plays into that role of having a safe, healthy flock of hens.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is John Cleve, who will be followed by Jean Ferrone and then Vicky Pasenko.
Hi, and I'm going to take less than a minute. I've spoken to all of you guys, virtually all of you, so you know kind of where I'm going to go. You're taking a look tonight at 4023. It's going to get passed. We know that. Ultimately, I just want to plead to all of you personally, to everyone that I've spoken to, indirectly and directly, please make that operating agreement strong. Objective, enforceable standards, and also please commit to the Evanston residents and the neighbors there that you'll enforce them, and that we set up standards for conduct, operations, just like the thing that I passed along a couple weeks ago. Tighten the language, make it objective, make it fair. It may very well be that 5 years from now it was the greatest thing we ever did and we're happy, but you guys are elected officials. You need to think about when it doesn't. So please make that thing strong and enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jean Ferrone, who will be followed by Vicky Pasenko and then Jill Cabot.
Hi, I'm Jean Ferrone. I live in the 6th Ward, and I'm here to support the new animal shelter. I'd like to address how the animals will be managed if a shelter doesn't exist. I would think the financial, logistical, and manpower burden this would place on the city would be substantial. With over 550 intakes last year, will the police be responsible to rescue, house, and transport to a different animal shelter? Where will the animals be surrendered to, and where will they be kept until transport occurs? Where would medical services come from if an animal is injured, either while in care or when they come in? And how many additional staff will have to be hired in order to manage this whole process, and where
15
will the
seconds.
financing come from? These questions will need to be addressed if the shelter does not exist, and I thank you for your time and encourage you to vote to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Vicky Pasenko, who will be followed by Jill Cabot and then Brittany Kirk.
Good evening. My name is Vicky Pasenko, and I'm the Executive Director of the Evanston Animal Shelter. 3 years ago today, I drove to downtown Chicago to drop off the proposal to Cook County that ended up being the award of $2 million. 3 years ago today. Since that day, I have stood at this podium in front of this legislative body 10 times, as each of you have approved the next step of this project. So when people say that has been rushed, it hasn't. And when they say that there's been a lack of transparency, that's just not true either. Every time there's been something before the council, it's been discussed in the open. So I hope that without any further ado, you'll vote yes tonight. Thank you very much. And can I have 2 seconds to say, I think they need a rooster. I grew up on a farm, and it sounds like a good thing to me.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jill Cabot, who will be followed by Brittany Kirk and then Isra El Halawani.
Hello, I'm Jill Cabot. I'm resident of the 2nd Ward. And as a taxpayer, I certainly appreciate the consideration of the cost of building a new animal shelter. Tonight, I ask you to consider the cost of not moving forward. Evanston will cease to have an animal shelter. The burden of the 500 animals that the shelter takes in every year will fall to the police department. The food pantry, which gives out $45,000 of free food. The custodial program, which provides more than $70,000 of free boarding and care. And the more than $140,000 spent on vet bills to heal our homeless animals will all go away.
15 seconds.
Please vote yes to have this vital institution stay in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Brittany Kirk, who will be followed by Isra El Halawani and then Brian Lamb.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Kirk, and I'm the president of the Evanston Animal Shelter Association and a Third Ward resident. Through the shelter, as Jill just told you, we offer programs that provide hundreds of thousands of dollars of value to the city of Evanston, not just by caring for animals, but also by supporting families in Evanston so that they can provide for the pets that mean so much to them. Without a new shelter, those programs are not going to continue, and it's the most vulnerable residents of Evanston who are going to suffer. Tonight, after a more than 3-year process and competitive bidding process, this council has the opportunity to approve construction of that new building, with nearly half the cost coming through a grant from Cook County and private fundraising. That is a tremendous deal for Evanstonians, and I urge this council to approve the shelter tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Isra El Halawani, who will be followed by Brian Lamb and then Phyllis Nickel. Is Isra El Halawani here? If not, then Brian Lamb will be next. The two are on the same topic and the same handwriting, so perhaps they stepped out together. In that case, we'll move on to Phyllis Nickel, who's followed by Gail Henry and then Ray Friedman.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Nickel. I live in the 6th Ward. And I am encouraging you all to pass Ordinance 4023 tonight. The City of Evanston has strong and capable city staff. They're the real experts in navigating the many facets of housing types, license development, and city ordinance violations, oversight, etc. The staff have seen and experienced firsthand when housing issues arise that they are powerless to fix. They know how frustrating it is for the community members. The proposed updated plan was thoughtfully designed to consider and address those frustrations and sticking points. If we look closely at the details, it is obvious the care with which it was prepared. Recent disclosure disclosed that city staff are made to feel disrespected and overburdened by such things as inappropriate last-minute asks. Sometimes it seems the requests are designed to stall, waste time, or undermine the staff findings. These changes to the city code provide more accountable, nimble, flexible. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gail Henry, who will be followed by Ray Friedman and then Lou Teuber.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Gail Henry. I'm the owner of Evanston Animal Hospital, and I've had the experience of working with Evanston Animal Shelter for the last 5 years since my practice has been open. And I just want to say I've been truly amazed at how much they put into the health and well-being of all the animals in their care. I've also been in their current facilities on a number of occasions and can tell you firsthand that the current building is just not sustainable. And that's coming from a health standpoint for the pets that are in their care. It likely is creating a lot of stress and can be detrimental to their health. So I really hope that you'll approve the proposed plan for moving forward with their new building. To piggyback onto Vicki, I'm also in support of the rooster. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ray Friedman, who will be followed by Lou Teuber and then Kara Norden.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back. First of all, I'd like to say I'm 100% in favor of the animal shelter. Question is how much should we be paying for it? My main concern, and several of us, are concerned about the use of general obligation bonds. You're proposing tonight 6 items with over $20 million in general obligation bonds. The items are SP3, A2, A5, A6, A7, and A9. SP3 is proposing $2 million in general obligation bonds and over budget by $1.5 million. The excessive borrowing from general obligation bonds is continuing to add debt service.
15 seconds.
We already owe, which appears to be about $15 million a year in debt service and totaling over $200 million that we owe. Please reconsider the use of general obligation bonds and approve projects that we only have the money to approve. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Lou Teuber, who will be followed by Kara Norden and then Mike Vasilko.
Hi, I'm Lou Tuber from Berglund Animal Hospital in the 7th Ward, another veterinarian who's worked with the shelter for 10 years plus, in support of the animal shelter. And in terms of the cost of not going forward with this to public health, animal health, mental health in the community would be detrimental. And I also support the rooster.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Kara Norden, who will be followed by Mike Vasilko and then Tom Hooven.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kara Norden, and I've been a resident of Evanston for the past 15 years and a volunteer at the Evanston Animal Shelter. I'm here today, which also happens to be my birthday, to ask for your support and funding for the new Evanston Animal Shelter. As it stands today, the Evanston Animal Shelter is not a sustainable place for our animals. The HVAC system is failing, cabinets are breaking, makeshift kennels are set up in the bathrooms, and there are leaks and flooding, and the shelter is falling apart. Where will our animals go if you vote no? The people of Evanston are also counting on us today. The shelter operates a pet food pantry for those in need and also a pet custodial program to help those owners who may be having medical issues or housing issues. So for all those reasons, let's come together today to make sure Evanston's voiceless residents are heard and have a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much and happy birthday. The next speaker is Mike Vasilko, who will be followed by Tom Hooven and then Christina Ernst.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that so many people are speaking as if the world is against the animal shelter, because we're not. We're not against the animal shelter. I think we have a consensus, in fact, that the animal shelter does need to be greatly repaired or replaced, and I think the replacement is the best solution. But it is the cost. There's consensus on it that there needs to be a new shelter, but we have to be fiscally responsible for it. The shelter as is proposed, I mean, you could build a much larger shelter if you built a design that was compatible with the overall average for building shelters. We're at $800 to $1,000 a square foot, when
15
the
seconds.
average cost is between $400 and $500, maybe $600 at the very highest end. So I think people are saying, oh, the bad people, they don't want the animal shelter. That's not the case. It's simply get the cost down to where it should be. We don't know what the cost of the project is as of this moment. Nobody knows.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Tom Hooven, who will be followed by Christina Ernst and then Jean Combs.
It's Tom Hoover, actually, a lifelong Evanston resident.
So sorry.
Dog owner. As I'm walking my dog through the neighborhood, I see all the signs for the kennel, and I'm like, sure, we need a new kennel. Then yesterday morning, I'm getting out of bed, I turn on the news, and there's a story on it. I do a little research and find out you guys are proposing probably the most expensive dog kennel or animal shelter in the nation. I've looked at a number of different towns, Detroit, some place in Ohio, Franklin County, Ohio, built for $372 per square foot, and they bought the property. Your guys are twice as high as you should be, and I know you're not going to answer questions, but I'm really curious why. That's all I'll say.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Christina Ernst, who will be followed by Jean Combs and then Jerry Hurst.
Good evening. My name is Christina Ernst. We reside at 1801 Lee Street. Our home for 27 years is directly across the Lee Street from the Crown Center Service Drive, from the Crown Center tennis courts, and from the cooling tower for the Crown Center ice rinks. We object to converting the tennis courts to pickleball courts, as it has been considered for this upcoming spring. Now the city is considering taking public tennis courts away from the Park District and converting them at Crown to pickleball. Pickleball is entirely different from tennis, and it is not neighborhood friendly. It is much more dense, much more loud, and brings 4 times the number of players to the same small space. Like the cooling tower and the backboard, and the loud sound of the pickleball will only be magnified in the
15
neighborhood
seconds.
by the 3-story brick structure of the Crown Center building behind it. The court are less than 60 feet away from our property, and the court has lights, and so there could be activities day and night. I hope there'll be a different solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gene Combs, who will be followed by Jerry Hurst and then Wynn Graham.
Hi, I'm Gene Combs. I'm a longtime Fourth Ward resident, and I'm a board member for Connections for the Homeless. I'm here to encourage you not to further delay anything about getting the Margarita Inn continuing running in a way that our staff is not distracted by having to come places to justify the great mission that we're doing. I walk past the Margarita Inn every time I walk downtown to shop or to eat, and I'm proud of that, and I think each of you should be proud to have the Margarita Inn there.
15 seconds.
The ordinance before you tonight will guarantee that we have strong supervision in fulfilling our mission. Please don't delay us.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jerry Hurst, who will be followed by Wynn Graham and then Mike Myers.
Hi, I'm Jerry Hurst, 8th Ward. I'm speaking about accessibility to the dog beach on our shoreline. As a co-steward of the Clark Street Beach Bird Sanctuary, we would like to make a strong case for leaving the area of the beach between the beach house and the dog beach alone. As part of our stewarding the enclosed Clark Street Beach Bird Sanctuary, which is north of the beach house, we have also explored and documented the plant community south of the beach house. Of the 40 or so species of grasses, rushes, sedges, wildflowers, and trees found in this area, fully 20 of them only occur in the area south of the beach house. There are 3 species, this area supports 3 species that are listed as threatened or endangered in the state of Illinois.
15 seconds.
Leslie Bourne's a longtime steward of Chicago's Metro's Beach Dune, toured this area and found it the most significant and biologically diverse area along the Evanston shoreline. Please vote for option number 1, which does not tear up the south part of the beach house. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Wynn Graham, who will be followed by Mike Myers and then Abigail Aziza Stone.
My comment was covered by Phyllis Nickel.
I need to be introduced. Mike Myers, First Ward, self-elected mayor of the Evanston Dog Beach. Thank you. We'll be there March 1, 6 a.m. Unfortunately, the truth is my sister has MS. She's in a wheelchair. She loves animals. Her and her friends can't have dogs. It's hard to walk them. It's hard to clean up after them. To have them come down a ramp and out onto the sand, it sounds nice, but the reality is you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and no one will come. And you'll need parking. You'll need handicap parking. Where's that going to be? So I'm suggesting we don't do that. I say get the rooster, don't bring him to the dog beach, and we don't need accessibility like all the other dog beaches in the Chicago area. Thanks.
Thank you for the unified theory of public comment. The next speaker is Abigail Aziza Stone, who will be followed by Kevin Kane and then Eric Wright.
Greetings, esteemed leaders in front of me, especially the ones who've had the pleasure of meeting me. Well, I also had the pleasure of meeting you all. I know you all know why I'm here. I am a board member on Connections for the Homeless and other boards because I believe in giving back to the community, and I am empowered to do that because I was housed and supported by Connections for the Homeless. I have a son with special needs. I know you all know by now I'm a brilliant and capable person, but because of my issues with my son, etc., I needed assistance, and I lived in Evanston when I experienced domestic violence and needed to flee first to a hotel and then to a shelter. So I'm aware of needing shelter, of sheltering in a hotel, and domestic violence is something that can happen to anyone at any time, no matter how brilliant, wonderful, educated, capable you are. So I beg you all to remove every impediment to Connections for the Homeless completing their great mission. And please look at your humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Kevin Kane, who will be followed by Eric Wright and then Jill Greer.
Hi, I'm Kevin Kane. First moved to Evanston with my family in 1982 and have raised my children here in Evanston as well. Tonight, I want to speak on behalf of Connections for the Homeless, a large supporter of the group. Previously, I had been housing commissioner for Evanston for several years as part of 2 terms that I served there. And much like Abigail touched on and Jean touched on, I hope that we can find the same sort of empathy for people and the needs that they have that can be optimized by Connections moving into the Margarita Inn at the level and hopefully even a higher level that we can show for a rooster and animals in the animal shelter. So hope that we can, as Abigail said, remove any impediments and really move forward in a way that opens up the opportunity to vote appropriately and move forward in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Eric Wright, who will be followed by Jill Greer and then Kindon Mills.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Eric Wright, my wife and I moved here in 2020, so we're not longtime residents. But long story short, came time to shop for a dog. We looked at the Evanston Animal Shelter, among other places. Fast forward a few months, we got into significant trouble with our dog, or he got into trouble on our behalf, I should say. And not only did the shelter and Vicky in particular play, a support role for us, therapeutic, in fact, they really helped us through an immensely trying time. And so I think a vote for the shelter at this point is not about the dogs, although that's an important component. It's about the residents and the support they provide for residents, those in need, like we talked about, the older, the infirm, et cetera, when those hard times hit. Also, if we could just get a handle on the HVAC in here, I think we could start saving some money that way and perhaps fund this thing because it's freezing in here. But anyway, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jill Greer, who will be followed by Kindon Mills.
Hi, my name is Jill Greer. I'm a 20-year resident of Evanston and a member of the Board of Directors for Connections for the Homeless. I'd like to use my time this evening to set the record straight about a falsehood that's being perpetuated by Connections detractors, amplified by some local media, and repeated before this council. Specifically, I'd like to refute claims that Connection, quote, profits from exclusive contracts for managing the homeless populations outside of Evanston, and that these communities gladly transport their homeless to Evanston and to the Connections. I'd like to say this is categorically untrue. Connections does not seek out or in any way encourage those experiencing homelessness to come to Evanston. We do not import homeless people from other communities. Neighboring communities are not sending us their homeless in an attempt to shift the burden to Evanston. What is true is that since operations began at the Margarita Inn in March of 2020, 86% of people served at the Margarita are from Evanston. Long-term residents. And while we do engage and support villages and townships beyond Evanston, it's with eviction prevention funding. This is so people have means necessary to remain housed in their own communities. In calendar year 22, I'm almost done, last fact, Connections directed over $1 million in federal and state eviction prevention dollars to people who live in other suburban Cook County communities. It may be simpler to believe that Connections clients come from other places rather than from our neighborhoods, but the facts are the facts. I'm pro-Connections and I'm pro-Rooster.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Kindon Mills.
Hi, I am a second ward resident of 21 years, an architect also working in residential housing for 21 years in Evanston, and I would like to suggest that the housing crisis that we have in Evanston and the housing policies set forth by the city of Evanston that allow teardowns and deconversions of 2 and 3 flats into single-family residences have put upward pressure on housing prices, which directly influences the amount of housing available to house our most vulnerable populations. So I think that we should consider that those who lose their housing, who are Evanston residents, are victims of a system in which the tide can rise, but some people are moored to the bottom, so they cannot rise with that tide. And I would like to close by saying that those who have lost their housing due to upward pricing pressures did not have a chance to say not in my backyard to development and to the change in the economic character that destroyed their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now return to the two people whose names were called and did not answer. The first is Isra El Halawani, and the second is Brian Lamb. Is either of those two people available to make a public comment?
Brian Bacharis is, and I signed up online today.
Yes, we'll get to the online signups afterwards. And so with that, we get to the online signups. We'll begin with the Brian Bacharises of the world. That's to say those who signed up online to speak in person, but not you literally.
Thank you.
Not you literally, though. So the first speaker will be Maddie Rutkowski, who will be followed by Brian Bacharis and then Susan Dawson. So Maddie Rutkowski, followed by Brian Bacharis, and then Susan Dawson. Is Ms. Rutkowski here? All right, in that case, we'll go ahead with Brian Bacharis, who will be followed by Susan Dawson, and then Trish Connolly.
I want everyone in this room to know I'm in favor of an animal shelter, but I'm here today to appeal to fiscal responsibility as well. I hope that none of you believe that if we postpone this project and revise it to something more within our communal means, that our pet friends will not continue to receive the care they need. This is not an emergency, as some will have you believe. Just this morning, I had a conversation with Mr. Michael Barnard. His company, Shelter Planners of America, has worked with over 750 animal shelter groups nationwide. He has presented his company's credentials for this bid, and when I described the build cost estimates of approximately $800 to $1,000 per square foot, he said I could quote him, "This is way out of line." He said his firm just delivered a similar sized project for $400 a square foot in Tennessee, and he suggested that in our market, a quality shelter could be delivered at a high cost of $500 per square foot due to the cost of labor in Chicago. And I asked him if I could share his cell phone number with council members. He said yes, and that information is in your possession. I implore you to do it. And Mr. Hurst, who spoke earlier, said the build cost for the Fifth Ward School is $350 a square foot.
Thank you very much.
Why do our pets deserve a better building than our children?
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Susan Dawson, who will be followed by Tricia Connolly.
Hope you can start the clock while I was walking up here. Just kidding. I'm kidding. It was a joke. Hello, I am speaking to you this evening on behalf of my client, Can Do Construction, who is a bidder for the Evanston Animal Shelter construction project. I'm happy to hear about so much support, but also happy to hear about the concerns about fiscal responsibility, because that's what we're here to talk to you about this evening. We are asking that you move to continue agenda item SP3 for further consideration, because the bidding process was not properly followed, resulting in the city choosing a bid of up to $200,000 over the lowest submitted bid, which was submitted by Can Do. Can Do was listed on the staff report as a non-responsible bidder based on information provided by the references that indicated a lack of experience completing construction of the size. However, that is not true. Only one of the three references submitted by Can Do was actually contacted. Had proper procedures been followed and all the references been checked, the city would have learned that Can Do does in fact do jobs of this size. The project is currently also requesting a waiver for the MWEBE goal, whereas Can Do's proposal would have fully satisfied this certification requirement. So again, we ask that you move to continue the agenda item, allowing you to save $200,000 from the general fund.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Tricia Connolly.
Good evening, Tricia Conley, Second Ward. Vocalizing what has been said before, we all love animals. I've got my dog at home from the animal shelter, and the people there have been great, and the volunteers. But let's face it, it's concerning, first of all, that this body put this as a special order of business. Why? Because now the project is zoomed to over 1.5 million more. That is not being responsible on the taxpayer's dollar to say, we're going to move this tonight and we got to vote on it and that is that. That is not okay to me as a resident, and I don't think it's okay with other people. I respectfully ask that since you must vote tonight, we can't hold it because it's special order, that you vote no and go back to the drawing table and bring back something that we can all live with on behalf of the animals of Evanston and their owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This brings us now to those who, I guess I'll go back quickly, is Maddie Rutkowski, who signed up online to speak in person here to give a public comment. Maddie Rutkowski or Rutkowski? All right. Then we'll move on to those who signed up online to give comment online, of whom the first is Diane Valletta, who will be followed by Abby Hansen, and then Chiara Camina. I believe you're muted, Ms. Valletta.
Sorry about that. I'm Diane Valletta, a longtime Evanston resident, now in the First Ward. I urge a yes vote on the animal shelter. Back in the 1980s, I was a board member of the newly formed Shelter Volunteer Organization. Even then, the former dog pound facility was already too small for the services we were providing. The building, 40 years later, now is severely deteriorated and unsafe for animals and humans alike. All these years, the animal shelter volunteers have provided hundreds of thousands of free hours of service to the people of Evanston, and all the while now jeopardizing their own health in that dilapidated building's toxic environment. Please find a way to approve this long-needed project. And I vote yes for the rooster also. Thank you.
Thank you. And who says we can't all agree? The next speaker is Abby Hansen, who will be followed by Chiara Camina, and then Mary Rosinski.
Hello, my name is Abby Hansen. I am a 6th Ward resident and an Evanston Animal Shelter volunteer. A common theme I hear in discussions of the new shelter is I support a new shelter, but it must be a cheaper way to do this. Simply put, there is not. The city and the Evanston Animal Shelter Association have invested over 3 years into the current process, including procuring a $2 million grant from Cook County and a $1.2 million capital campaign commitment from the shelter, significantly reducing the cost to taxpayers. A city hired architect firm has determined that a renovation would be more costly than a rebuild. Apples to oranges comparisons of building other shelters that don't meet the city's LEED Silver environmental requirements and capacity requirements for a shelter are not helpful. As inflation rises, rebidding will only prove more costly, as been noted by city staff. It will also jeopardize the Cook County grant money, which conditions the funds on completion of a new shelter by November 2023. Therefore, the
15 seconds.
council should vote to.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Chiara Camina, who will be followed by Mary Rosinski, and then Susanna Malarkey.
Hi, my name is Chiara Camina, and I am a sophomore at Northwestern University. Like many college students, I struggled with feeling homesick and disconnected when I first arrived on campus. However, my outlook on college life changed when I became involved with the student animal organization All Paws In. As the vice president of this organization, I've witnessed firsthand the incredible impact that Evanston Animal Shelter has had on both animals and people. It is more than just a place that rescues and cares for animals. It is a safe haven that fosters friendships, connects individuals to the broader Evanston community, and creates lifelong bonds. The shelter has become a home away from home for me, and I am grateful for the connections and experiences it has provided. The shelter is an essential part of our community, and it is vital that we continue to support its mission. I urge you to consider the essential role that the shelter carries out and allocate the necessary resources to ensure its continued success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mary Rosinski, who will be followed by Susanna Malarkey, and then Virginia Mann.
Hi, Mary Rosinski. I also going to echo Brian Vicharis and the other gentleman who spoke about the cost of the shelter. The shelter is good. We all want a new shelter, but we could have 2 shelters that are high quality. Just because we're getting the numbers right doesn't mean we're getting a cheap shelter. And I think that the taxpayers. I'm a realtor, and I searched the North Shore, the most expensive houses in the whole North Shore. There's one at $11 million, 11,000 square foot home. It's $1,000 a square foot. All the other new construction homes are like 500 a square foot, and those are gorgeous kitchens, 14 rooms, baths, all that. Not that animals don't deserve it, but we have to watch our costs. If we say we're going to spend $7 million, because we are already at
15 seconds.
$755,000 with the $720,000, we can get the right numbers in here like any other responsible government would do and cut the price and get a good quality product. And I just really implore you to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Susanna Malarkey, who will be followed by Virginia Mann and then Cecile McHugh.
Hi, I'm Susanna Malarkey. I am a 9th Ward resident. The shelter is so much more than just a place to house animals for the community. The Evanston Animal Shelter runs so many programs that help aid the community and keep pets in their homes. The custodial program allows pet owners to temporarily house their pets at the shelter during unpredictable emergencies such as significant illness, a house fire, or escaping domestic violence situations. The Evanston residents are also able to access the free food pantry at the shelter where they can get what they need without any question or judgment. They also offer access to some of the most necessary vet care with an annual vaccine and microchip clinic. On top of that, it offers thousands of hours of volunteer experience for residents and just builds a positive and bright institution for the city that would be a great loss for everybody if the vote does not go yes today.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Virginia Mann, who will be followed by Cecile McHugh.
Good evening. I'm Virginia Mann from the 6th Ward. I've lived in Evanston for 27 years now. I've sent all of you an email, but I do want to mention that it's rare I come before this council and recommend you spend money. I do so only if I see a real value to our residents, to our community, to our property values, and to the quality of life here in Evanston. Today, I strongly urge you to pass supporting the Evanston Animal Shelter and moving forward. For 3 years, this issue has been examined closely, determining what is needed for our shelter and our community, for not only homeless animals and neediest animals, but for the people who love them as well.
15
we have
seconds.
had a competitive bidding process, and it's clear that between the delays, the additional cost Evanston imposes on any construction project, the rapidly increasing cost of construction products across the nation, this
Thank you very
is
much.
the cost to bring us what we need here in Evanston. And I urge you very strongly to get this moving forward so that we don't lose the $2 million grant from the
Thank you very
county,
much.
and that we can properly care
Th-
for the animals and the people who love them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final speaker is Cecile McHugh.
Hello. Cost of animal shelter? No. Let's not repeat what happened with Robert Crown. Prioritize housing people. The shared housing ordinance is unclear and incomplete. It does not adequately define shared housing. The definition is stated to be an incomplete list. For example, residential care homes and long-term care facilities are not listed, but are they considered shared housing? A complete list or conceptual definition must be given. The ordinance states only IPMC requirements for sleeping room square footage, not other IPMC occupancy requirements. And there are other limits in COE city code. For example, an occupancy cap for transitional shelters set at 30 residents. It's important to state which requirements override which in the city code. Suggest the
15
new Chicago
seconds.
approach. Consider 2 rooming units to be the equivalent of a dwelling unit in the calculation of allowable units, providing a way to consider both rooming and dwelling units in the calculation of allowable units, and a clear definition of the scale at which, at least some, shared housing types become planned developments.
Thank you
Heard it
very
said
much.
tonight that this strengthened licensing for transitional treatment facilities, but there are extensive requirements for residential care homes
Thank you
and
very much.
transitional treatment facilities in the city code. Not sure what will happen to these requirements, including the requirement that
Thank you.
residential care homes are not for those addicted to drugs or alcohol. Suggest the same for all shared housing, not for those addicted to drugs and or alcohol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes public comment for the evening and brings us to our agenda, the first item of which is SP1. Would someone care to make a motion relative to item SP1?
I will move item SP1, ordinance 4023, amending portions of Title V, Chapter 2, lodging establishments of the City Code.
Councilmember Reed moves passage of ordinance 4-0-23. Councilmember Revelle seconds. Is there any discussion? We begin with Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The ordinance in front of us tonight is the hopefully end result of a process that began in May of 2022. When I made a referral to develop some kind of license structure for the Margarita Inn. The issue of the Margarita Inn came to prominence in the community about a year ago when we realized we were 2 years into what was a temporary, intended to be a temporary arrangement, and Connections wanted to make it permanent. And as the council member in whose ward the Margarita Inn exists, I'm in the middle of this, and I've said from the beginning I'm supportive of Connections operating at Margarita Inn as long as we do this right. And to me, doing it right means that we have the appropriate structure in place at the municipal level that gives us adequate oversight and regulatory authority over Margarita Inn into the future, because once we approve it, it's going to be a part of our neighborhood. It's a part of the neighborhood that it provides a service that we need. And I am proud to have this operation in our neighborhood, but we need to make sure that when all the individuals on this council and all the individuals currently working in that facility are long gone in 20 or 30 years, that it's still going to be a valuable part of our community. So this ordinance tonight is a result of that discussion, which has been going on for 9 months. And originally, my thought was we need to develop a license for the facility like the Margarita Inn. As things have evolved, staff has very kind of rightly pointed out that, you know what, Margarita Inn is only one type of shared housing. And we have all these other types of shared housing which are not really adequately regulated by our current code. So how about if we do it this way? And this way is what's in front of us tonight. It's a highly flexible approach that allows us to finely tune regulations to any number of different types of shared housing, whether that's a dorm or a hotel or apartment hotel or types of shared housing that we can't even currently contemplate or maybe are just a glimmer in somebody's imagination. And this allows us, without going through the whole exercise of the deep and intensive and time-consuming dive of rezoning, and we're going to be doing that at some point over the next few years. But this allows us to adequately regulate any number of different types of operations and allows us to fulfill the objective that I said from the beginning, is that I want to make sure we're doing it right when it comes to Margarita Inn. So as one of my Fourth Ward residents pointed out, it really comes down to the operating agreement and making sure that the operating agreement has all the regulatory language that we need it to have. And that's where I'd like to focus the conversation moving forward after tonight. So I am very firmly in support of Ordinance 4-023. I encourage my colleagues to join me in support, and then we can focus on the next steps moving forward. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Just a point of just order and question. So I'm trying to understand better a special order of business. As defined, it says that it refers to a docket item which will be considered by council at a specified date that did not originate from any council committee or subcommittee And I'm just want to make sure I understand, because our referrals committee is a standing committee of city council. So how does, aren't we in violation? Just so I understand, because this came from the referrals committee and then it was referred to P&D. How did this then make it to, as a special order of business, according to this rule? It says right here that did not originate from any committee or subcommittee. Referrals is certainly a committee, a standing committee.
Well, I'm sure that our legal counsel will want to weigh in here, but as the person who sent the notification of the special order of business, my reading of that rule is that it's a mechanism to create an item on a city council agenda that need not arise from a standing committee. It doesn't mean that it cannot also happen to have a subject matter that is overlapping with that which has been heard by the referrals committee or heard by other committees. It's just it's an alternate venue to get something here.
But it
Sorry,
says it
alternate
did
path to
not
get something
originate,
here.
that it cannot originate from any committee, and this originated from a committee.
Point of information, or point of something.
Okay,
Councilmember
Kelly has the floor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because, I know, but this is a standing committee. The referrals committee is an official committee. It's a standing committee of the city council, and it then referred it to P&D. So, Mr. Cummings, if you could explain how this is legitimate to become a special order of business.
Good evening, members of City Council. Clerk Mendoza, City Manager Stowe, Nicholas Cummings Corporation Council. If we recall the legislative history of the revision of 1811 of the City Council rules, this was an attempt by the Rules Committee to try and define what a special order of business was. Previously, the city manager could place an item special order of business, but this council did not want, or I should say this council wanted more legislative control over what appeared on an agenda. So what you have just read is really an attempt by the Rules Committee to try and define what a special order business can be. However, the rule goes on to further state that a special order business can be placed by the mayor or at the request of multiple members of City Council. It doesn't necessarily restrict it to, or it's not restricted to an item that doesn't originate from a committee, but it was only defined that way in an effort to try and capture items that may have come from the city manager's office or some other staff requests in terms to amend the code in order to make enforcement a little bit easier. So that was the legislative history of that particular rule. It may need to be revised again, but it was an attempt to really just try and define what a special order of business is. It doesn't restrict the ability of the mayor or members of city council to place items on the agenda as special orders of business.
Point of information, which is in order. I think the key word here, and this is a rule that I paid keen attention to, I think the key word here is originate. And nothing originates in the referrals committee. The referrals committee simply disperses things out to the proper committee. Something that would have originated in a committee, for example, the plastic bag ordinance, which so many people are in favor of, that originated in the Environment Board. That's where members brought it up, and so it would be improper to take the plastic bag ordinance and place it on for special order of business. But this ordinance in particular this particular ordinance did not have a hearing at a particular committee and did not originate there. And so I think in this manner, that's, to me, in my mind, where the difference is.
Okay, it states it very clearly, but that it did not originate, but okay. Our special orders should mean something. And so generally I would think that, I tried to do some research, you have something urgent that has to come up and you don't want it to sit in referrals and wait for it to go through the committee. So this does seem to me that it did originate in committee and it was referred to committee and then it got pulled and then pushed to special order. So to me, it feels like this wasn't really very proper, but according to the way it's worded here, our definition of special order of business. So just want to state that as a concern. And I have other comments, but I can come back.
Councilmember Reed, followed by Hedekaris.
Yeah, I hear Councilmember Kelly's note there. We also, our rules are not law, so if you're passionate about this, I'd be happy to make a motion to suspend our rules. to make sure that we're doing it in accordance with our rules. Don't think it's necessary, but
Go ahead.
to be clear, that's always an option. I'll just note that this, I really want to commend, staff and particularly Councilmember Nusma for working on. I mean, this has been one of the more controversial issues that we've dealt with, and I know about controversial issues before this body, and this makes sense. It makes sense to have specialized operating agreements for particular organizations that this council, this body will have the power to vote on. Our city will have the power to enforce those operating agreements. And, whether it's, connections or whatever the shared housing situation is, it's important that we have these in place. And so I'm really supportive of this measure. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for our city. Happy to be supporting it.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Councilmember Reed pretty much said what I was hoping to say, but I do want to just echo that and commend staff and also Councilmember Nusma for working on this. Ever since being on council, we've talked many times about the situation at Margarita Inn, and I'm glad to have lent my support and my co-sponsorship on this this ordinance going forward, and I'm looking forward to voting yes tonight.
Seeing that no one is requesting to speak for the first time, we go back to Councilmember Kelly with 3 minutes and 10 seconds left.
Great, thank you. So first I want to say, express deep gratitude to all the volunteers for Connection for the Homeless and for many in the first ward, and for the good work that Connections does. I don't think moving in a way that's responsible with regard to licensing is in any way mutually exclusive to supporting our homeless. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not comfortable with this. I think that we're rushing through this. It was stated to me by staff that we are rushing in order to accommodate Connections for the Homeless proposal at the Margarita Inn, their funding deadline. So that makes this sort of a form of special legislation. I think that's problematic. I also think the ordinance in itself is very problematic. It is a one-size-fits-all licensing. So we're not setting standards. We should be setting very clear standards for hotels. We should have standards for transitional housing. They shouldn't all be under the same umbrella of shared housing. This is not responsible to me. This means that for every single one, we're going to be creating that individual operating agreement, and staff will change. In every council meeting, we're going to decide whether that's appropriate for every single operating agreement, and I think that can create inequities and a lot of problems. This was referred on 124. This is one that was put in just a couple weeks ago, so this ordinance, Councilmember Nusma, has not been around since May. I only could find it on 124 in the referrals agenda online. So that's when it first became available and was completed and present to the public and to me. I think this is also, Ms. Schechter pointed out problems that we might face with fair housing in terms of who is going to be subject to licensing, what type of group homes. I think we haven't really adequately vetted what this is going to mean for staff, and if we have a change of staff and we have certain operating agreements written for one hotel and a different one written for another one. This is not responsible. They should be held to standards. And I think there's one more thing I wanted to say about that. Anyway, I think we need to wait. We need to look at this with more time. Doing this as a special order of business is, to me, reckless. I also question, whether it was a legitimate way to do this as a special order of business. And again, I think, we're proceeding. I think everyone knows that Connections for the Homeless, this is a form of transitional housing, transitional shelter. We very easily could have changed our transitional shelter to go from 1 year to 2 years and ensured all the, fabulous oversights that the state lists for shared housing, from outcomes to how, there's a whole list of guidelines that shared housing is subject to that would that if this were going through normal procedure as under a shared housing license, would be subject to much higher safeguards and standards. So I think we're making a huge mistake. And again, I thank everybody for their volunteer work and work for the homeless. I just want to make that very clear. I think we are proceeding in a rushed way. That's not fair to the residents of Evanston. Thank you.
Councilmember Revelle.
I'd like to just point out that we have a lodging establishment rule, and it applies to a number of kinds of shared housing facilities, and they are all currently required to have a license. So what we're doing is we're adding some additional types of facilities to this umbrella of shared housing. And so we currently have sort of a general license requirement for a number of shared housing facilities. What we're adding now is really the enforcement teeth in the standards, because we're going to be requiring all of these facilities to have an operating agreement where we spell out all the different safeguards, rules, et cetera. So I see this as giving us more tools to make sure that these facilities are run well, and that the residents in those facilities are well taken care of. There are a couple of things I'd like to clarify. Because in the memo that we received a couple of weeks ago, there was an extensive discussion about co-housing, implying that co-housing was going to be possibly a new kind of shared housing that would be included in this. But we'll have to make that decision when a co-housing project comes to Evanston. We may at that point decide it's a different animal and not really belonging under the shared housing ordinance, because it may not need a license and an operating agreement. It could be quite the co-housing projects that I'm familiar with are not at all similar to these kinds of facilities that we're talking about in this ordinance. And I did have one question, and I guess this is for staff. It relates to section 5-2-7-1, where we talk about the annual license, and we talk about $26 per room. And I guess I'm wondering, some of these shared facilities would have a common area. So is that common area considered a room that's going to be charged $26, or are we talking the sleeping rooms, or what? How are we? Just a question for clarification.
Good evening, Mayor Biss, members of the City Council, Clerk Mendoza, and City Manager Stowe, Sarah Flax, Interim Community Development Director. It's a Scrivener's error. It should be rumors, not rooms.
Oh, okay.
So that actually changes it, because it's always been, that's
right,
how that is.
Yes, the current license talks about rumors. Okay, well, thank you. That helps. Okay. Anyway, just back to my main point, I think this is improving our ability to provide proper oversight and management of a whole host of shared housing facilities, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
At this time, no one is requesting to speak for a first time, so we'll go back to Councilmember Reed with 3.5 minutes left. Sorry, I misread a light. In that case, no one is asking to speak for a first or second time. Councilmember Kelly, whose time has expired, turned on a light. Can you speak for
Sure. I just want to make
seconds?
it clear for the public, so everybody knows that this is, in fact, no other city has this, and we're rushing this through. This isn't based on any best practice from other cities, that this is not a proper way to proceed for a city, in my opinion. This is a haphazard way. And again, I want to reiterate, not only do I think, having a one-size-fits-all where we're not setting standards for different groups, we could end up facing a discrimination lawsuits out of fair housing if certain group homes are subject to licensing where others aren't, because the list is not exhaustive. It says here we don't really know what all is included yet under the shared licensing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I believe Councilmember Reed does have a light on for a second time with 3.5 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. One of my least favorite sayings is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. At some point, the wheel was invented, and the wheel has been improved over time. But to Councilmember Kelly's point, can anyone answer? Are there communities that have ordinances similar to this? Is that accurate?
It was answered last time that question came up.
Well, and what is the answer?
No, Ms. Flax explained last time.
We haven't found one that works exactly like this, but we also haven't found one that works exactly like the one we already have, which is also, problematic maybe. Then.
Are we saying that there aren't communities that staff has found that license shelters?
No, that had a group of different, quite different types of shared housing under one form of license. Because right now we have hotels, rooming houses, all these different things categorized under one license. And so really, as it's been discussed, what we're really doing is providing greater ways of distinguishing among them and making sure that they are appropriately regulated.
And then if you can just speak to, and maybe you already are, but the logic behind, so what is your thought on why would we combine all of these into one ordinance?
Well, one of the things is, if you notice, we're calling it's a shared housing provider. There are different facilities that can be used in different ways. And so the license is with the housing provider. It is not with the property, because properties can be used in different ways and may need to be regulated separately. So that's one of the reasons. It gives us, we don't know what changes are going to come up in the housing market, but we know they are going to change. They're new in different ways. People are looking to provide housing. I'm not necessarily saying this would go under shared housing, but look, for example, what happened with COVID-19 when we had nurses and other medical people going from city to city to city trying to find housing. Well, they had to figure out ways to, provide housing for them. The world is changing. The housing world is changing as fast as the rest of the world, and we can't contemplate everything in advance. And one of the things that having an opportunity to at least consider any new things that come up without saying, we have nothing in our code that allows us to even think about this. Now what do we do? Do we create something for it? It gives us the ability to discuss and consider things more easily.
Yeah. And last question here. So one of the questions I had that was raised by someone in public comment Jesus Christ, I'm forgetting her name. She does a lot of great housing work here. But that was raised in public comment was about shared housing. So, for example, if I'm, I've got a single family home and I've got too many bedrooms, and I wanted to rent out a bedroom to someone in the community, would I be captured by this ordinance?
Not necessarily. We've allowed home sharing for many, many years. In fact, the city used to provide funding to interfaith, well, it was now Open Communities, but whatever it was called before that, who did a home sharing program. And that is just somebody renting an individual room or having somebody living in their home. The one thing we had to make sure of is that they didn't violate the more than 3 unrelated. But it's not like we're going to try to regulate absolutely everything that anyone does. So some of those things have proven to be perfectly reasonable methods of providing housing that we wouldn't interfere with them.
So as the ordinance is written today, it would not, if I'm just going to rent out a room in my house, I'm senior and have too much space, I would not have to get an operating agreement and have it approved by council?
No, we would
okay,
not
that was the
expect
concern that I hope is answered for those who had it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else is seeking to speak. Just before we ask the clerk to take the roll, I just want to weigh in both on behalf of any kind of written record that's being created for any purpose, and also, frankly, for our own practice moving forward. In my opinion, this is a utilization of a special order of business that is entirely consistent with both the spirit and the letter of our rule. Certainly happy to entertain any discussions we might have in a different venue about ways that rule should be changed, but I think this is both what was contemplated, what the rule says, and how we've done things on a number of occasions in the past. With that, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, sorry, if I misspoke, I apologize. What I meant to say is with 8 voting in favor and 1 voting against, sorry, there's a 1 right in front of me. With 8 voting in favor and 1 voting against, the motion carries and ordinance 4-0-23 is passed. This brings us to item SP2. This is just a discussion, but would someone care to make a motion to enable the discussion to move forward?
Mr. Mayor, I move item SP2, discussion of the Dog Beach ADA access.
Second.
Councilmember Newsom moves that we discuss item SP2. Councilmember Reed seconds. Ms. Biggs?
Hi, my name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer for Evanston. We have been looking for the last direction we got at how we might consider providing ADA access to the dog beach. And I have our consultant with us tonight. He's going to do a short presentation. Mark Wagstaff works for Smith Group, and he has been with us since we were first starting to deal with the lakefront issues several years ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
We went animal shelter before Dog Beach, so we're getting used to it.
Oh.
Yeah, but you can do it like a show.
Okay. Yep. Good evening, council members. So my name is Mark Wagstaff. It's a pleasure to be here again this evening. I'm going to present to you about 2 options for the ADA access at the Dog Beach. So I'm very quickly going to share a little bit of background information, and then we will get into the 2 options. I'll talk a little bit about the differences between them. Each one does have an initial preliminary cost estimate associated with it, and then we have a schedule that shows the implementation of the project. So these 2 aerial photographs with the Dog Beach you can see in the middle, Clark Street Beach at the top, and then the boat launch below that. So the one on the left is from 2013 when we had particularly low lake levels on Lake Michigan. And the image on the right is 2021 when we had very high lake levels. You can see the difference in the amount of beach area that's available. And one of the things that happened during that period of high lake levels, as the water rose, we got a lot more wave action and a lot more erosion, particularly in the Dog Beach area, which undermined the existing access that was there. And that's what has created the situation where we need to provide some different access. This image was taken just last fall. It's of the the northern three-quarters of the dog beach looking towards the city. You can see that the lake level has come down a little bit. There is now some sand that's available there, predominantly at the very north end, but still very, very little beach in most of the project area. These two images, one on the left is just the summer. Last summer it shows sort of some of the difference in elevation between the roadway that's behind that vegetation and down to the beach. And then you can see on the right that there's a series of double gates that people have to pass through in order to get onto the beach. And that you can see in this image that there's, again, some of that elevation difference between the beach level and the sidewalk roadway at the back of that image. So if we go to the two layouts that we have, the first one is entirely within the dog beach area. The entrance is, if I can, let's see if this pointer will work. It does not, I don't think. But so the entrance is exactly in the same place as it is right now. There's a series of two gates, and then there is a sloping sidewalk that is ADA accessible, meaning that it's less than 5%, so it's suitable for people in a wheelchair or walker or what have you. There's a little landing at the southern area of it with some seating, and then it continues down to the beach elevation. And then there's also in this option a staircase for someone who wanted to make a more direct route down to the dog beach. As you can see, this one has an estimated price tag of about $550,000. And it doesn't connect into the rest of the pedestrian infrastructure. It connects to the sidewalk, but as you'll see when we look at the next option, excuse me. So these are just some images sort of illustrating the kinds of features and furniture that would be provided as part of this option. And then the second option, there's two entrances. One is at the crosswalk, goes down a series of steps down to a landing area. The second entrance is by the Clark Street building, which is where there is more staff available. And the dog wash area, which is in that round plaza area there, is much closer to the building, which is where the water service is. So this has a path that is fenced on both sides so that dogs and people remain on the path and that the beach sand does not blow onto the path. It goes down, then we make a small little cut through the existing sheet pile wall, and then the remainder of the path comes down onto the beach, and that's protected by some stone on the lakeside should the water levels and the waves come back up. So this one, it does go through the vegetated area. It is a slightly cheaper option, priced at about $450,000. Part of that is because we have to move less of the large armor stone that's in the existing revetment. And it's also because everything is on the existing grade, we don't have to create quite such a substantial structure to support the path as it goes down. Again, some images showing some of the furniture and features that would be present with this one. And then the last item that I have here is a schedule. So the overall plan is that once there's a decision as to which option is preferred, we will go immediately into a preliminary engineering phase, and then would be able to roll right into production of construction documents, We have the bidding process through the standard city procurement methodology through the summer, and then construction planned for the fall and completed by the end of the year. I'm happy to take any questions that there may be.
Thank you very much. We begin with a lot of interest. We begin with Councilmember Burns, followed by Wynn and Ravel.
I think my question is more for staff. I'm just cautious about this because how long will we have a beachfront here for? How are things trending?
That is an excellent question. Right now, the lake level is dropping, and it's dropping pretty quickly, more quickly than normal. Staff is concerned about the long term. Is that going to be the case? One of the nice features about one of the options where we went over the dune area is that most of that is outside the area where we were seeing wave action at the high lake level. But long term, Smith Group is still working on our shoreline protection project. They're in the middle of doing the study, and they're having public engagements where they're gathering feedback about what people would like to see invested in at the lakefront. And so the long-term answer is, well, they're going to help us decide what we would need to protect it in the foreseeable future. But it is a possibility that the lake level could come back up. This design is designed so the ramp is buried at the bottom, so as the sand migrates up and down with the lake levels, it's somewhat protected.
Thank you. That's all.
Council member Wynn, followed by Ravel, followed by Reed, followed by Kelly.
I have two questions. The first one is on option 1. How wide is that stairway that comes down from the gate?
So it's shown at about 5 or 6 feet, about 6 feet wide. It could be wider. I mean, 6 feet is a nice sidewalk width, and you can have people pass easily. It could be made a little narrower, or it could be made a little bigger, but it's a standard sidewalk width.
No, my concern was more that it might be too narrow. I mean, I've been to the dog beach. I have a yellow lab, weighs 75 pounds. I wouldn't want to pass somebody on the stairs with him. So, I mean, he would be fine.
Yeah.
But, so then my other question is, do we know, with respect to option 2, have we talked to the organization that maintains that dunescape there? And do we know how much this option would potentially disturb that?
So I don't know the direct answer. Our Parks and Rec staff was reaching out to that organization, and I don't know what the result of that was. But it's definitely something we'd want to do in conjunction with them. It's something we'd want to do in conjunction with them, and would actually work with them to make sure that we did what we could to maintain the dune area.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Ravel, and then Reed. Councilmember Reed, did you turn off your light? Or are you in the queue or no? Okay, so Councilmember Ravel, followed by Kelly in that case.
So I have a question about option 2 and that ramp. So is it also a ADA compliant grade? It looks so short, as though it would be steeper.
No, this one, it actually is the same length, because we would take it a little way onto the beach at the south end. So both options would be well within the ADA code, for sure.
Okay. And then what happens, though, if you're in a wheelchair and you get to the sand? Are we going to have those kinds of things that we're talking about at the swimming beaches I see Dave Stonebeck nodding his head, because we certainly want to make sure that once they get to the bottom of the ramp, they can actually enjoy the beach.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think that's my question.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. They look very nice, both the plans. I guess I want to understand a little bit more, like have you done any sort of study yet with regard to ADA parking, usage, stairs? I mean, I think, as a resident pointed out this evening, generally speaking, folks in wheelchair may attend, but they don't have dogs so much. And this feels like maybe one of our most elaborate, ADA entrances for an area where we're going to have I'm just wondering if we've done a study yet.
So we haven't, under neither scenario are we looking to add parking. There is existing ADA parking. It's not shown on the image here, but it's close to the beach house building. I believe there are 3 ADA parking spots. So this option that's on the screen right now, option 2, the entrance would be very close to the ADA parking.
Trying to picture where's the ADA parking?
Yeah.
So that's further than that's going away from, right? I mean, so it's not adjacent to the ramp. So, I mean, it seems like maybe there should, so that, I think, to orchestrate the ADA parking with that, but then I would also ask that there is a study done on usage and frequency, and just to have a good idea of that. I wonder if you would also consider, and I haven't asked him, but Mr. Myers, who's here, and other folks who frequent the dog beach and who have friends who do have some disabilities, who sometimes visit, it might be nice to go down and spend some time with them at the beach, because I know they've been, studying all this intensely. I think it would be great to get feedback from actual users. I'm throwing that out there. Mr. Myers, would you be amenable to something like that? Okay.
I do want to state, though, that the access pathway is usable by anyone who wants to use it, ADA or otherwise, and it is a way that is required by law. The city has to plan for people to be able to use the service. But when you get to, say, roughly where that half circle area is, right before the ramp onto the beach, there's a gate that you can't get through unless you have a permit to use the dog beach and you have provided vaccinations and licenses and all sorts of stuff. So generally speaking, ADA people without dogs would not be able to get to the dog beach. They would only get access if they had dogs, which is true regardless of if we build an access ramp or not. Of course.
Could I ask you to come forward and introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
In this plan, you're asking.
Could you just introduce yourself again?
Mike
for the
Myers,
record?
Ward 1, Mayor of the Dog Beach. You are asking.
When you want to be mayor of the whole town, just let me know.
No, thank you. It's yours. You're asking people and humans and wheelchairs to enter together. That's madness. That's chaos. It's just it's too much. All coming into the one entrance is going to be really difficult. If you're in a wheelchair, if your dog is pulling, if somebody's barking, somebody has a picnic basket, it won't work. On the other one, I don't understand. Can we go to the other one, option 1? Why do we need stairs? If we're talking about ADA and you say stairs, I'm very confused. Why do we need stairs? If you're in a wheelchair, you don't use stairs. So, okay.
Staff requested the stairs be added because if you've ever had the option to walk into a building where there's an ADA ramp that goes off to the side and up and around, or walk up a flight of stairs and you are not mobility limited, a lot of people choose the faster route. So that's purely a customer service sort of thing. What's legally required is the ADA access. And honestly, we could probably add stairs to the other one as well. There would just be an additional cost.
Just by way of housekeeping, I saw you turned your light back on, Councilmember Kelly. You still have the floor, so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Myers. Again, a huge resource regarding this. So do we know yet, like life expectancy, what the erosion, what plans there are here for erosion control currently with this plan or not yet, or is that?
So both of these two access scenarios they both would be designed so that they would be stable, regardless of where we were within the historical lake level. So they're going to be designed to be secure. What we can't control, and these access structures won't do, they won't change how much beach is available or not available. So in terms of their longevity, and they would be designed to a normal engineering standard.
Okay. I just think for the price, because it is a big price for an ADA ramp, I think we would need some kind of guarantee, that it's engineered properly in a number of years, guarantee in terms of erosion and everything else, given where its location.
So it would be, the plans that we produce would be stamped by a professional engineer, and we will look at, an appropriate range of conditions. One of the things that we were going to do in both of these cases is make sure that that where the ramp comes down to the beach is that it actually kind of goes buried down further into the sand, so that if there is some loss of beach sand, the structure itself is not undermined. And as you can see, in both cases where we're exposed to the open lake, there would be armor stone protection on that side.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And I guess I want to echo some of from the bird sanctuary. Is there somebody here? Could you speak again a little bit to the issues? I do. I'm concerned about the amount of space, and I also would like to hear pros and cons of the temporary ramps, like ones that we put in and take away, and can we look at that? But I want to hear also, because I do care deeply about our bird sanctuary.
Well, I just learned about this. I just saw the plans this afternoon, happily. I was speaking with our forester on another issue, and he mentioned that it was on the agenda tonight, so I looked up the plans, looked through them. My concern is that I don't know how much it will be used. I don't know if it really is a legal necessity that there be ADA access to a dog beach. But my concern, I really like layout option 2. I think option 2 is beautiful. I think, as a human being, I think this works really well. However, we're in a situation today where we need to consider a much broader population that we have going. I'm going to ask you to, because there are plants that are listed as either endangered or threatened in this area. This one area is one of the unique, the area where that half circle is next to the groin, and there's the vertical line going down, that area there has some of the rarest plants, and it's a unique area along the lake shoreline. That area floods. It's called there are ephemeral flooding in the spring, and that creates specialized conditions for specialized beach plants, and it's rare along the Illinois shore, of the Illinois lake shore. So I'm asking, if you have to do it, then if we have to have it, then pick the other one so that we can at least for the, to save the biodiversity that's there in the area.
Thank you very much. I echo all those concerns, and I would like us to really look into it legally, what we have to do. I'm really concerned about what we're going to be filling in with cement in this area. And I'd also like to explore, is there an option to do a temporary, that we put in and that we remove, and can we look into that? I just ask that we look into that and that folks visit, again, the dog beach with people who frequent it as well as, disabled friends along with it also, so.
We did begin to look into the temporary access, but even the things we have, like the floating dock at the Church Street Harbor, which are in many ways much less complex than having a ramp that changes grade at a very shallow slope over a rock area and the sand and everything else, we just determined we do not have the staff capacity currently to manage that sort of temporary installation.
And the plants, are those, the plants that were in the picture, are those ones that we'd have to put in every single year over again, or what kind of plantings? I think there was, one of the pictures had.
That is something we wanted to work with. So this is not actually in the bird sanctuary area, as I understand it. There's a formal bird sanctuary area, which I'm not saying that it's still not an important ecological area. I want to be clear. But we wanted to work, although we've never made an official agreement with an organization to go out and plant things on this dune. We believe there are some people who are doing it to the benefit of Evanston. And we want to work with them to make sure that, if this is the option chosen, to make sure that we are bolstering the dune with additional plantings, and that is something that we improve on versus that we would, be reckless about destroying it.
Thank you. And that cost includes like the wash down part and everything, right, for the dogs? That cost
Yes.
includes. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed, followed by Harris, followed by Nusma.
Thank you. I guess I'll chime in here. I'm supportive of option 2 as well. Happy to move forward with that. I do think we need this. I know it's noted that according to the CDC, there's about 500,000 service dogs out there with people with disabilities. So certainly, there's a need for this. So certainly happy to support this, and option 2 makes a lot of sense to me.
Councilmember Harris, followed by Nusma.
Good evening. So a while back when I first was appointed to the council, I remember there was a discussion about ADA beaches. Do we have other ADA beaches accommodation?
We are, as a community, spending the resources necessary to provide additional wheelchairs that are designed for beach use, provide additional mats that go all the way, that are removable, that go all the way to the water's edge. So that's something that's being implemented, I believe, at every beach. There's a rollout period, so it might not, we have to order the materials and everything, but I believe that's already on tap. There's just a difference between a Moby mat, which just gets rolled out and is really easy to move around, versus a structure that has to go down a fairly significant grade difference in terms of how easy that is and how expensive it is to manage.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll take your word for it that the ADA requirements are legally binding, but I'd also like to point out that we're talking about more than just people in wheelchairs, right? You can be mobility compromised in other ways. You can have crutches. When my then 10-year-old broke his leg, he had crutches. We had a temporary thing, so we didn't have to crutch all the way in from the parking lot. And you can be respiratorily challenged in such a way you can walk fine, but stairs are a real challenge. So when we're talking ADA, I want to make sure we are keeping in mind we're not just talking about people in wheelchairs. The dog wash requirement, that's not part of ADA. Where's the dog wash requirement coming in from?
That is a service that was provided at the previous dog beach, and so we're just reestablishing it. And I think dog wash sounds really fun and formal, but really it's just a hose, more or less, that takes water there, they can turn it on and off and wash their dog off. So it's not that fancy, but it is something
So
that
there's not
staff
value to be engineered in that
probably
particular
not, but the
feature?
Parks and Rec staff did request that we reinstate it since it was a feature that people have been asking about.
Okay. All right. I guess we're not voting tonight, but I'll throw in my support for option 1 because of the plants. If it weren't for the endangered or threatened species, I would definitely vote for option 2. If there's a way we can accommodate those concerns with some kind of combination, I'd be in favor of that. But
So one thing that we certainly can do is look at, there's nothing that's sort of particularly magical about the alignment. We need it to be certain length so that we can get the grade, but we could definitely move around if there's particular plants that couldn't be moved. Obviously, if there are plants that are there that can be moved to another, adjacent part, very happy to work with the native community, the plant community, and, adjust the design to accommodate that and add other, plantings as part of it if that's, desired.
Thanks.
Just for the record, I know that some folks have switched on their lights for second cracks. You're being noted, but we'll continue going with folks speaking for the first time. And so now is Councilmember Hedekaris.
I'll just vote on option 1 for the being mindful of the plants. That's my one feedback, even though option 2 looks aesthetically more pleasing.
So at this time, no one's asking to speak for the first time, so we'll go back to Councilmember Nguyen with 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. In the queue are Councilmembers Reed and Revelle.
Just briefly, I think because of what we heard about the native plants, I think we should go with option 1.
Councilmember Reed with 4.5 minutes left.
And I'm sorry, I had some form of a Freudian slip by looking at option 2 here. I saw you note it down. I'm actually option 1, so my apologies.
Councilmember Revelle with 4:25 left.
Okay. I've just gotten an email from Libby Hill, who spends a lot of time at the bird sanctuary, and she reports that in option 2, the sidewalk already gets covered with sand, so the same thing will happen to the ramp. So she's concerned about, so she would be encouraging us to vote for option 1.
I will say that is something that we did think of, and we were designing the fence so that we, if necessary, can remove sections of it to clear off the ramp more easily. But that is a genuine concern, definitely.
Councilmember Kelly with 2 minutes left.
So we're not actually voting, right? We're just giving you some feedback, correct? This is just a discussion. I just want to be clear, because I would still like some feedback about like temporary to explore, putting something down and removing it in terms of cost, and not really knowing yet how many years we're talking about for stability and erosion. So if we could explore that option also, I think that'd be great to see if there is some form of a temporary that just like we do at other, not just like, but similarly to other beaches where we wouldn't have to be less expensive. So, and I'd also would love to get, again, the users who are there all the time, their feedback and on site. Thank you.
And yes, just to be clear, there's no anticipated vote tonight, and candidly nothing to vote on at this time.
I would say there is a contract that's a change order for Smith Group that is valid to design either of these options that is being voted on as part of consent agenda. So it's item A7, which can be removed or voted, but it is likely that if we go down that path, we will not be ADA compliant in this season. Or it wouldn't be ready for spring next year either.
So just to be,
So
if
it's
then was,
not-
if the item A7 does not move forward today, then you expect the dog beach not to be ADA compliant in the summer of 2023.
It's not going to be ADA compliant for
Sorry,
summer
in the
23
spring of
either way.
24, right.
But it will be a challenge. The longer that we delay, the more it's going to be a challenge to be compliant by 24 as well.
So at this time, no one is asking to speak for a second time, so we go back to Councilmember Reed with 425 left.
Thank you. Even with I'm certainly supportive of option 1. I do believe option 2 is a beautiful option as well. So I am interested. I believe someone asked, or I think actually Laura, you brought it up, or I'm sorry, not Laura, you brought it up, sir, that there's the potential to, look at, relocating or some of these natural plantings and maybe incorporating more of that. So while you can put me down, my tally down for option 1 now, I would still be interested, particularly, $100,000 isn't a huge deal for our overall budget, but it starts adding up. So I would be interested in option 2 if there is a way to achieve both, maintaining, some of the, not maintaining, but maintaining the presence of natural landscape in a similar amount, even if it is in a slightly alternate location. So I'm just interested if you have something that when you come back to us that you can show us that incorporates that. I could, after consulting with folks, get behind option 2 if that's possible.
So again, no one's asking to speak for a second time, so we go back to Councilmember Kelly with 1:20 left.
Okay, so I would like to, Mr. Myers.
Point of information. And I'm fine. No, I'm not.
It's like
no,
calling staff. I'm just calling.
Yeah, it's fine to come up. I just wonder if we're having public members
That's
of the
using up my time, yes. If that's
yeah, I
what
just
you
want to
wanna
make
know.
sure if it's using somebody's time.
I'll use up my time.
Sure.
Okay, so my question on option 1, if Dr. Henry is still in the house, is it safe for dogs to be running on sand and concrete at the same time? And also, dogs run wherever they want. There'll be sand over that thing in a second. It'll be covered in sand. So is there going to be somebody that will be constantly coming out and sweeping it? So doesn't seem like a good option.
Thank you. I know it would be valuable input. Thank you so much. I agree. I just think this needs to be explored more. I don't want to vote to spend over $500,000 on this until we have some questions answered. I also want to know life expectancy. If we invest this, I think we should have a guarantee for life expectancy. And I'd also like to know some pros and cons of a temporary one that we put in and take out to save money. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I just want to say I support and endorse a lot of what Councilmember Kelly is saying. I think assuming that this is not guaranteed to be in the scope of whatever we're trying to do to protect the shoreline, to create a barrier that would protect this area, I think just putting down investing this much without knowing that it's going to be included in that project, and maybe it is somewhat concerning to me. So I think I also would be interested in just understanding the costs, labor costs, and the cost to put up a temporary option. I'd probably be fine with number 1, but I think it'd be helpful to at least know what those numbers are and explore any other options that we haven't explored yet.
Seeing no further council members requesting to speak, this concludes our discussion of item SP2. Thank you very much to both of you for an awful lot of information. And this brings us now to item SP3. Is there a motion relative to item SP3?
I'll move item SP3, approval of contract with CCC Holdings Incorporated for the Evanston Animal Shelter construction.
Councilmember Reed moves approval of contract with CCC Holdings. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
I am happy to have the presentation first.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Members of the City Council, we have received the bids on the Evanston Animal Shelter and reviewed them, and we have a short presentation to go along with the packet. My colleague Shane Carey will be giving the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Biss, Clerk Mendoza, City Manager Stowe, and members of the City Council. I'm going to present the costs and the budget for the animal shelter. Maybe. Okay, first, just want to reiterate the fact that the existing animal shelter is at the end of its useful life. It presents a number of health and safety and welfare issues that need to be addressed. Next slide, please. All right, in 2017, city staff brought some of the concerns about the animal shelter to the City Council during a budget presentation. In 2020, we had the opportunity to apply for a grant from Cook County to increase the amount of shelter space that's available in the county. We were one of 2 recipients of that grant in March of 2021, and we embarked on a design process that we went through from that culminated in a bid that was opened in January of this year. As you can see, our budget has changed over the course of the past 5 years or so, and the cost for the construction of the project has come in substantially higher than what we had budgeted, and our total project cost is expected to be $8 million. Next slide, please. We were aware that the construction industry was going through substantial inflation during the design process, and we embarked on several different value engineering processes during the design in order to try to keep the costs down and in line with our budget. We removed about 2,000 square feet of building, which is a substantial amount. We removed a sally port, which was to be used for transferring the animals from vehicles into the shelter. We changed the wall construction into a lighter framing material. We reduced the amount of ornamental fencing. We selected less expensive material finishes, and we reduced the number of landscaping elements. The construction escalation that occurred is kind of hard to identify exactly what has been happening in the industry. Spent a lot of time looking through different publications, RS Means, CBRE, Turner Cost Index. They all kind of carry or report some of the inflation that occurs. I've also found that the Federal Reserve provides some information on industrial buildings, healthcare facilities, and office buildings separately. So there has been a lot of talk about the cost per square foot of our building in comparison to other projects. And so I thought that it was important for us to provide some context. There were several projects that we used when we were budgeting the project that came from our expert consultant, Harris County, Pets, Baytown. Anyhow, these are several projects that are located in the Midwest. And as you can see, the cost per square foot for those buildings ranged from $350 to $470 or so per square foot. When you escalate those costs, you find that the costs are significantly more now, and this was using the Federal Reserve's data for industrial buildings. And then at the bottom of this table, I have normalized the Evanston Animal Shelter costs. And now what I mean by that is that I have reduced or removed some of the costs that we have that those other projects did not incur. That includes the soft costs that were not included in the description. That includes our environmental remediation that we have to do for our soils, which is improving the site. And it also removes some of the costs that we have for LEED and our climate action plan. And you can see that when you remove those items and you compare it to the others, we're actually close. We're a little bit higher, yes, but we're pretty close to the other costs. The average is at the bottom, which is $611 per square foot. Next slide, please. Here's a graph that's visually describing the same numbers that were in the past. I have added two projects for context. One is a healthcare facility that's at Hanson Park Health Center in Cook County, and another which is the Harmony House, which is a cat shelter located in Chicago. Now, it's important to note that the Harmony House is a net zero building and should have and does have substantially more costs than our project does and than the other projects. And you'll also see that the construction escalation for has been substantial for that if you apply to that as well. Next. Now here I've added the Evanston Animal Shelters projects, the full budget back into the chart so that you can compare and see the difference between the entire budget and the other projects that were comparable. Next slide, please. Here I've broken down the separate costs that we've identified for the construction of the project. There's the site costs, the building costs, the FF&E, the consulting fees, the temporary relocation and the moving costs, environmental initiatives, and the brownfield cleanup. Again, to be clear, when I was showing the table previously, I had only included the building costs, the site costs, and the fixtures and furnishings and equipment. So our next steps are getting approval for this contract with CCC Holdings, and if you provide that approval, we will start getting that contract in place and begin construction as soon as we can get the animal shelter moved out of the existing building. That's it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Laura and staff and everyone. So I am highly supportive of this. I might have a conflict of interest here because I got my dog Macy from the Evanston Animal Shelter. And I've seen firsthand the issues here. I don't need to go over it. Everyone in the audience and folks during public comment did a swell job of illuminating the issues there. But I do have a few questions because I do want to make sure that we're, one, representing the, there were a lot of reasonable concerns about the cost here, and I really appreciate the presentation that you gave. First question, though, is just, so the slide that showed, I know you took out the, go back a few, that one there, $709 for the Chicago shelter, and that was way back in 2007. Were these numbers adjusted for inflation?
Yes.
Okay, so that was just
the $709 column is adjusted for inflation.
Okay, because I was going to say it'd be a lot more if it wasn't adjusted for inflation. It certainly would equal over $1,000 in today's dollars, and so it would really put us in line. But thank you for that clarification. You also mentioned that there was another shelter that, or another organization shelter that received the grant funding from Cook County as well?
Yes.
Who was that?
The other organization was the South Suburban Humane Society, and they are on that top line there.
Okay.
So they have completed their project.
And if they got
finished last March.
How did they beat us to the punch?
There are a variety of reasons why they were faster than we were. Do you really want me to go into all of them?
No,
Or a couple of them, maybe?
Yeah, if you want to highlight the biggest point.
So they used a design bid or a design build procurement method to speed up the process. They also got the full funding that they asked for from the county, so they were able to get started right away, while we had to identify how we were going to fund the missing money from the grant application. And then we also had to negotiate with the county what the details were for that. And we were not we weren't first in line, so to speak. And that has a lot to do with the number of animals that they need to send to South Suburban versus how many animals they need to send to the north side of Cook County.
Thank you. I have to look into that design bid procurement process.
Design build, sorry. I
Design
said
build,
that
I'm
wrong.
sorry. Design build procurement process. No, no problem. That was me. So questions that I've received from folks in the public who are maybe on a different, or who have a lot of concern about the cost here, and I want to make sure that we're getting some of those questions answered as best as possible. So, I want to say I don't believe this particular presentation was in the packet. Is that correct? It was
Correct.
not. And I think it would be helpful for some members of the public to have access to this the same time we do, so some of their questions will be answered. But I know you guys are doing the best you can, but if we can try to get that out a bit earlier. So, and it seems honestly as though many of those questions were answered. Do you feel like a lot of those questions that you had were answered, Mike? Do you still want me to go down through some of the list?
I'd like you to go down the list because
All right. Soft cost. So what I saw there was furnishing and equipment was included. So are those?
Yes. So the fixtures, FF&E, the soft costs are usually just the consulting fees.
Mm-hmm.
So that is included as consulting fees, and it's just over $700,000.
And have we adjusted any of our FFE cost based on inflation? Have we?
So the FF&E costs are identified in the project. So FF&E stands for furnishings,
Fixtures,
and equipment. Sorry. Okay. And it's identified in the contract, and it'll be about $600,000.
Okay. And the architectural plan, is that
That's included in the consulting fees.
permit fees? Are those included?
We don't have to pay permit fees.
To the city itself? Okay.
Because it's ours,
Makes sense.
our fees. And then there's also some permitting fees that go to the MWRD, and they waive their fees for us as well.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And then, and I'm just going down the list here of questions from the public. Contingency, that was built in. Can you explain? Was
Yeah.
it built in?
We have contingency that's built into the contract, and we also have contingency that we hold outside of the contract in a part of our budget.
Thank you. And then as far as cost for the temporary facility,
So that is,
and the transfer of the animals back and forth between those temporary facilities, is that built in here?
it is. And so the temporary relocation and moving costs, which is about $600,000, contains the relocation. It contains the lease that the Evanston Animal Shelter Association is currently having for the cat operation. And it contains some of the construction that we're performing at the recycling center in order to get it ready for the dog operation, which will be located there as soon as we can finish that.
Thank you. And then is the contingency and soil remediation and management, which was estimated at $650,000, is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is included in there. There, as best as we can, it's buried, so there's always chance for problems, but we've made an estimate of what we think that is going to be there. Estimate based on what we think that we're going to find based on the geotech report.
Okay. And then off-site traffic signalization, is that one?
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
At the time we started this project, it was the intent of the city of Evanston to sell the recycling center. And for years, we had planned to have the developer pay for the cost of the traffic signals because they would have needed that. At the time that we decided to not sell the recycling center, the city of Evanston still needs the traffic signals to operate the recycling center. However, at the similar time, we have a project on the Oakton corridor to do improvements. That project includes traffic signal work on this traffic signal to upgrade pedestrian countdown timers and other things. And so we folded the other traffic signal work on this traffic signal into the Oakton corridor improvements. And there are actually a couple of other items on this project that are related to the animal shelter. We're replacing the sidewalk along Oakton with a multi-use path. That's going into the Oakton corridor improvements project. We are also reconfiguring the entrance, and that is also part of the Oakton corridor improvement project.
Thank you. So I think those were the major questions from folks who had concerns here, and it seems like staff has done as they tend to do, which is a bang-up job at getting a lot of those questions answered. I'm sure there's still other concerns and will continue to be questions, but I just really want to highlight, I'm based on what I've heard now, I don't see cause personally to delay this any further. I truly appreciate, Shane and Laura, the presentation where Councilmember Newsom and I were speaking about this earlier, the presentation where you broke down, if we were to take out the LEED, or reaching the LEED certification, if we were to take out the soil remediation, the brownfield cleanup, the cost gets reduced substantially and brings us in line with other communities, and I think folks would be okay supporting this. It's very clear that the sentiment in our community is that we need to make this investment. It's a value statement. I think making sure that we're keeping up with our environmental goals and putting the dollar amount that we need to get to the LEED certification is important. I'm going to be supporting this tonight. And is that my time up? Yes. Okay. 15 seconds and wrap up. And so I certainly support this. Happy to move forward. If there is something else that someone else brings up that gives me pause and really maybe I'd be supportive of tabling this for one meeting, but I'm not seeing anything yet, and so happy to vote for this. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns, followed by Hedekaris, followed by Nusma.
What's the square footage of this building? I can't find it in.
The square footage of the new construction is 8,850.
Okay. And then are there any portions of this project that are unique to animal shelters that are really driving costs from on the construction side?
The only thing that I can really think of is the fact that this building is electrified. That does add costs. It's not it's not driving all of our costs. It's like $300,000 is what we've identified for that. But that is very rare for animal shelters to be all electric.
But the I'm trying to find it now. Did not include that though, right?
To animal shelters. Sorry. Animal shelters have really high air changes, and that does have an effect. So the HVAC system is substantially more robust than a school, than your house, certainly.
Because the electrification of the building is not included. That cost is not included in the 618. I think I see here.
Correct.
Okay. But what you just described is the
yes.
Okay. What else? Yeah, I guess just the moving forward. I don't know if everyone up here gets the bid and proposals alert, but I would recommend that we all sign up for that, because sometimes it feels like we always know someone that could do something for half off, and it feels a little bit like, hold my beer or hold my lemonade, I can do that too. And if that's the case, it's like we have a process for it. We have a bids and proposal process where they could submit their proposals, and I would love to see us cut half off of any capital improvement, any project that we do. And I want to be clear here that if you look at our packet, it's not like there was only 1 or 2 responses. There were 10, well, really 9 responses, but 10 total. One, I know this is being disputed, but one was unresponsive, I think is how they, non-responsible. But they came in, as the lowest qualified bidder. And so this idea that there are all these, great qualified companies out there that would come in lower, it's like, where is it? I'm looking at, some really good names out here that we all know that do a lot of work in our area, and they all came in higher. So I may not completely understand what's driving all the costs, but I know there was a great effort both from our kind of construction and engineering community to take a look at this project and bid on it, as well as from staff to try to eliminate as many costs as we can. And I think a good effort was made. So I will support this, and again, encourage people who know folks that are willing to do stuff half off to apply next time and bid. And that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Hadakatis, followed by Nusma, followed by Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the process of evaluating these RFPs too. Before I was on council, I was lucky enough to help out and be on the RFP committee for the skate park design. And, this is the way that staff is selected to take part in this process. It is different staff from different departments for every different project. So you don't have the same people making the same decisions over and over. You also get insight from people who have different jobs at the city and have different insight as to and it was for me as like a citizen that was allowed to sit in, it was really helpful to hear all the different feedback from different departments. And like I said, trust the process. I think it was great that we got 10 bids. And I think this also shows us that we're going to have to make some tough decisions on what we do next year if inflation keeps on going up. But I think I'm excited to start the process and also start thinking how we can save some money in some other places.
Councilmember Nusma, followed by Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am in support of this as well. It's true that our building costs more than we thought it was. Why is that? I think inflation is the answer. Nothing we can do about inflation except, tighten our belts moving forward. Why does our project cost more than other comparable projects? It's because of our CARP commitment. Not only are we all electric, but we're also LEED Silver. Those two things aren't identical, so there's additional cost in achieving the LEED Silver compliance that's not captured in the all-electric cost that you cited, I believe. Is that your statement?
Correct.
Right.
That is correct.
But bottom line, it is going to cost a lot of money. Let's not deny that. And so I think we need to look at other potential sources of revenue. I know that we're going to go back to Cook County and ask them for some additional funding. Our counterparts in the south suburbs were able to get an additional $1 million on top of their original $6 million. So let's count that as a good precedent. I also think we might have an opportunity to raise the bar even higher with our fundraising commitments from the animal shelter community. Based on the number of emails I've gotten alone, there is tremendous support in this community for what we're doing here. I don't think I've gotten this many emails in favor of anything in my 2 years on the council. If each of those people could step up to the plate with a nice contribution of $100, we'd be almost halfway there, I think. So I'm going to make I'm going to throw in some of my money from the Nusma Family Charitable Fund, and I hope everyone else who has expressed support will do the same and find 2 or 3 friends to also throw in. So thanks.
You can count me as a co-sponsor on your email tax referral. The next speaker is Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. And I have already thrown in money. And I'd also like to say, I think I now counted, we actually adopted 4 animals, as well as we fostered a litter of kittens from the animal shelter. So deep connections. I don't think that like a $250 donation would make me have to recuse myself, right? That's too small. Okay, just checking. So, a special order of business, again, I just want to bring this up. I just feel like there's a little bit of like an $8 million project, special order of business. This was supposed to go to APW. We postponed it because we ran out of time, and now it's special ordered. So I'm just not really, just feels like it's being a little bit abused, Daniel, the special order of business. Like, this seems to me it should have gone through APW. Again, we also just got this tonight. I don't think anybody does looking numbers over on the fly like this. I don't think this should have been presented to us earlier. So that wasn't in the packet. I think that's a problem. Love the animal shelter, the people that work there, everything about it. Can't support an $8 million project for an animal shelter. I think a lot of it's about the scope of it, which we didn't. We talked about it. We gave some direction. We never voted on the scope of the project, whether, what kind of fancy, tape. I don't know what's going on in there, but it's feeling a little bit like, this is feeling a little bit like a Robert Crown redux, quite frankly. So want to support the animal shelter. I think I'm with everybody about supporting the animal shelter. I just don't think that financial accountability, responsibility, and a new animal shelter, these are not mutually exclusive. We can do both. Oh, and I did have a question. Someone asked me this. Where is the solar panel cost?
So we have not put any solar panels in the project. We have provided structural support for future solar panels and then a couple of penetrations through the roof and space within the electrical room. And so the solar panel support is in the building cost in this number.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for the moment.
Councilmember Wynn.
I'll be brief. For all of the reasons that have been cited by all of the speakers and by all of the emails that I've received as well, I'm strongly in support of this. Thank you.
Councilmember Revelle.
And I'll just chime in as well. I mean, one thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight was the value engineering that staff did to, try to trim some of the potential costs and, minimize that budget as much as possible. So I think, everything's been done to, bring it in as cost effectively as possible. We've just been the victim of this construction inflation period that we're in. And I'm hopeful that that Cook County will step forward and give, increase the grant money for us. And so I'm, certainly overwhelmed by positive emails, so I'm very happy to support the project.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I weighed in. And one of the things that we hear residents say is that we need to listen to the voices of the residents. And I took a tally because, as my counterparts have mentioned, we have received over 100 emails about puppies, kittens, even roosters. And I took a tally of every single email I received except for today because they came in the droves. And I had 70 emails about this issue. And I only had 11 people tell me no out of 70. So when I vote yes, I want everybody to be clear that I've listened to everyone who reached out to me, and we have numbers to prove that. Is the cost high? Yes. But if we kick this down the road, as we tend to ask us, as the community tends to ask us to do, kick things down the road, we come back with a higher price, and then we're mad again. So I do hope we do some more fundraising. We now have Tyrone, well, we're still going to talk about Tyrone the rooster, but we can add him to one of our nice photos, and maybe he'll get you some more money. But I am voting yes.
At this time, no one is asking to speak for the first time, so we'll go back to the several of you who have asked for a second crack. The first is Councilmember Reed, who I have to say is out of time, so if you could just take 15 seconds, please, Councilmember.
Yes, thank you. 15-second rule. I just want to state one thing in support of something Councilmember Kelly said. We've had discussions about a no surprise rule, and I think that's important for us on this dais, but it's also important for staff And to Councilmember Kelly's point, I do believe, in part, we could see this as a surprise, this new presentation. So in the future, again, just to reiterate, I hope we can do better on that. And then lastly, I will say this also I could make an effective argument earlier about the other item not originating in committee. This item did originate in committee, and I just do wonder if it would be more proper to suspend the rules on this item, just to have consistency with the way we operate. I fully expected that suspension of the rules would pass, but I think in order to ensure that we are not misusing the special orders of business, and we are following the rules as kind of written in plain language, that might be important. Over 15 seconds. Thank you.
Councilmember Newsma with 3 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to address Councilmember Kelly's question about the cost of solar, we don't anticipate there will be any additional cost to add solar. We plan to do a power purchase agreement similar to what's already in process for Robert Crown. Hopefully we'll have some good experience under our belt with the Crown project and can replicate that with the animal shelter. So zero additional dollars to get those solar panels on the roof. All we've done is make sure the roof is ready for them.
That's true. With the power purchase agreement, it's actually being done at the same time as the Robert Crown because Crown was also built solar ready. The city staff has recommended for several years now, we have a number of solar installations on city buildings. They are extremely challenging for us to maintain. We don't really have the resources to keep updating to the latest technology, and for that reason, and we don't get tax breaks the way that a private partner would get tax breaks from the federal government. So for that reason, solar, regardless of this project or any other project, staff has been recommending that we go to these private partnerships to lower our costs and make it easier for maintenance reasons.
Councilmember Kelly with 3 minutes left.
Thank you. I think we all got this letter about a recent construction in Detroit, a very large town that did 30,000 square feet at $6.6 million. Just a huge difference in cost. So I think it is just trying to, again, I think it's about what, we did not ever actually vote on the scope on what we wanted, what we wanted included in this. This was, I know there's a certain obligation in terms of the animals that we have to house, but I think the scope has gotten a little bit out of control that we're now talking about $8 million. But question, does that $8 million, if we are to get more from Cook County, that will reduce the $8 million, correct? It's not going to add to it.
The $8 million is the project cost. If we get more money from Cook County, it reduces the city of Evanston contribution share of that $8 million.
Of the six. So it's $6 million for Evanston, 2 from Cook right now, right? About?
It's it's 5.4. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's 4.8, 1.2 from Evanston Animal Shelter Association, who also has to fundraise for operations. I'll just let you know, the majority of their budget is fundraised. And 2 from Cook County. I don't think Cook County, in all honesty, is going to swoop in with like $4 million. That'd be awesome, but it seems unlikely. But yes, we already had many conversations with them.
Great, thank you. And do we know what do we have an estimate on annual operating costs?
The current budget is they spend $300,000 to $400,000 a year, which the city of Evanston gives $100,000 to offset payroll costs.
Okay, and could that potentially change if this ends up being much more costly? Is the city going to be on the hook for more annually?
I will defer to Vicki Pasenko on answering that. She operates, the executive director of the shelter.
Great, thank you.
What's your question about operating funds?
Yeah, just, obviously this much larger scale, like how much this is going to cost to operate annually and what that could mean in terms of residents.
So we're there won't be any charge to residents. I mean, there's a $100,000 payroll grant that was initiated 7 years ago when we took over the shelter, and that was primarily because at that time there were 2 full-time animal wardens and 1 part-time person in the shelter that the city paid to help take care of the animals. They eliminated 1.5 city employees and gave us $100,000, which I think was a bargain, at least at that time. So that won't change. There's no expectation that that will change. And we fundraise. I mean, we've had escalating escalating costs of operation costs as well. Vet bills are through the roof, and in addition to them being high, we've had this onslaught of these animals that have had just horrific things happening to them. So we raise that money, and that isn't a cost to the city.
Thank you very much. Just wanted. And my last comment is that I think, of course, I support the animal shelter and having a new animal shelter. And I want to say that with regard to those many letters, I've spoken to many of residents, my constituents, and they support me in my concern about fiscal accountability. And they don't have a problem. They support me in wanting an animal shelter and also wanting to make sure that we're really doing this in the most cost-effective way. So I just want to put that out. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Hadagaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and 1 voting against, item SP3 is passed. This brings us to the consent agenda. I'm told, and Chair Harris, maybe you can confirm this, that items A3 and A9 did not make it out of ANPW this evening, so they will be removed. Are there other items besides A3 and A9 that folks would like to see removed from the consent agenda?
A7?
A7?
HS3.
HS3? Oh, is that the, oh, all right.
HS3 is roosters.
HS3 is roosters.
So,
HS3 is Tyrone.
yeah, I'm like, Tyrone smoking cannabis.
So sorry, so do we want Tyrone off the consent agenda? Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you.
So we have A3, A7, A9, and HS3. Anything else? This is the hardest part of my job. The body language is very ambiguous. People look so studious and they're kind of staring at their agendas.
So can you say them again, just to be safe?
Yeah. Y'all ready?
I'm sorry, did we say H1?
No.
H1.
Okay. So now let me just read them what I have so far. A3, A7, A9, H1, and HS3. So 5 items, 2 of which are not eligible for a vote. Anything else before we move forward? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I will move the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves the consent agenda with the exception of the following items: A3, A7, A9, H1, and HS3. Councilmember Harris seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Hadagaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma? Aye. Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
With 9 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and the consent agenda, with the exception of the 5 items previously read, is passed. This brings us to item A7. Councilmember Harris, would you care to make a motion on item A7?
I move the approval of change order number 2 with Smith Group, Inc. for the Evanston Shoreline Repairs, RFQ 2145.
Second.
Councilmember Harris moves passage of approval of the change order. Sorry. Councilmember Harris moves approval of change order number 2 as in item A7. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. I believe this is the item, right, that had the dog beach, the ramp. So I feel like we are still waiting to explore some other options before allocating funds for that, $500,000. So in terms of a change order. So I would like to see us wait on that. That was what I understood from our discussion.
Is there a motion?
Sure. I'd like to move to hold this item until we get more feedback, both on the different things that we discussed, including potentially a temporary
A hold is not until a date certain, holds until the next meeting.
until the next meeting.
Second.
So Councilmember Kelly moves to hold on item A7, and Councilmember where did the second come from? And Councilmember Burns seconds.
Non-debatable, so we just move on.
So it's a non-debatable motion. So here we are. Item A7 is held and will be on the March 13th meeting agenda. This brings us now to item H1. Would someone care to make a motion on item H1?
I'll move approval of the small and medium residential rental provider assistance program and funding request in the amount of $500,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves passage of the small medium residential rental provider assistance program. Councilmember Harris seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I serve on the Housing and Community Development Committee, and I served on the task force that worked on this with staff, with Tashik Kerr, Anna, and an eighth warder, Hugo Rodriguez, really helpful in getting this done, as well as the entire committee at the Housing and Community Development Committee. We had a lot of discussion about this and back and forth about this and bounced this around. I've even though I served on the task force that worked on this, conflicted about this, and this is a decent chunk of our remaining ARPA. So I just want a quick update on ARPA, and that's why I pulled this. Oh, and did we have? All right. And if we don't,
Is Mr. Stoneback, do you know if Ms. Flax is still in the building?
or if I'm just looking for a quick number to just tell us where after this purchase where we'll be at, to keep that in mind.
Good evening, Dave Stomack, Deputy City Manager. We had just roughly $5 million left, but I believe that since that time, I believe it's $1.2 million that was potentially allocated to Evanston Warehouse building is no longer needed since they didn't close on the building that they hoped to purchase. It could be something that could be put back on there to reserve some money for a different building, but right now there's no immediate concern for that. So I would say there's roughly $6 million left, and we will have a presentation at the next council meeting on that, but right now this is coming up. So.
Well, wonderful. That's actually a good update. So it makes it even easier to vote to support this because we got money that we didn't expect there. So I'm in full support. I'll just note, because I hope this becomes a trend, we are not naming this the small or medium landlord, how program, whatever. It's a residential rental provider, to just start changing some of the language that we use around folks who own property. Landlord is, I think, an antiquated term, so I want to highlight that, and hopefully we can start getting that language incorporated more and more. But with that, thank you. I encourage my colleagues to support this.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I also would encourage us to support this. I don't think anything that has, had this much kind of thought and deliberation around it as it pertains to ARPA has been held up as long as this. I think some of those reasons were justified, and others, I have questions about, most of the ARPA funds, and certainly the way we've thought about this program is really a emergency response to, people or business types affected by COVID, landlords being certainly being one of them. And, I think they needed this support a while ago. I think they still do. And in particular with the news that we have an additional, million, I think we should support this and look forward to continuing to have a discussion about how we use the remaining ARPA funds at the next meeting.
Seeing no further comments, will the clerk please take the roll on item H1?
Councilmember Hadakarius?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
With 9 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries and the program is approved. Finally, this brings us to item HS3. Councilmember Harris, would you care to make a motion on behalf of your constituent?
Yes, I move for ordinance 22023, amending the City Code of Evanston, Title 9, Chapter 4, Section 5, certain animals prohibited to allow roosters for educational purposes.
Second.
Councilmember Harris moves approval of ordinance 22-0-23. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Oh,
No, go ahead. Go first. Go first.
okay. Well, I appreciate Councilmember Harris moving this. I think this is your first referral and first ordinance, so happy to be a co-sponsor on this. Not a whole lot to say here, but this is I think this is good for the kids. I hope to be able to meet with the great educator who brought students here to advocate for this. Received emails from ETHS students on this, although I didn't always get a reply, but certainly happy to read the emails and really happy this is coming before us. Just point of personal privilege. When I was a young lad, not in high school, I spent some time going through our city code, and this was one of the first ordinances I came across and reading, and I found a typo with the Gallus domesticus. And so this has been an ordinance that has been, kind of living in my mind rent-free for almost a decade now with the era. And so I appreciate this update for a number of reasons, but particularly that we're going to grant our students more enrichment with their education and learning how to create a more I think it's food sovereignty is the new term, and I got to get a bit more educated on exactly what that means. But certainly, the basic understanding is we really need to move to a different ecosphere around, growing more food locally, having, resources that are not, shipping avocados and chicken and all kinds of stuff, halfway across the world. The more that we can incorporate this locally is important, and so this is this is larger than just allowing a rooster to be at ETHS. This is really about changing the way that we use resources. To me, this is a part of our CARP goals and a whole host of other things. So really important to be what seems like it may not be important, or it seems like it may be a smaller thing that we're allowing a rooster at ETHS is really a part of a much larger picture and really will provide wider reaching benefits than I think we even conceptualize here to our community and to our students. So thank you.
Councilmember Harris, followed by Nusma.
Yes, I should have went first. So. No, our students aren't here. They needed to get home to be able to study and rest. But I was just very proud that this body of students came before me to advocate for the need for the rooster. As Councilmember Reed said, we got at least 30 emails advocating for the rooster, the use. I was very impressed how articulate the students actually were. They came up with reasons why Tyrone, and I love the name, should stay at ETHS. And I just was very proud that we had this population that I don't think we pay a lot of attention to. And they spoke up and they helped make this possible. So I'm very proud of the students who at ETHS are my residents for at least 8 hours Monday through Friday. So very proud of that group of students. Thank you.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So often the city of Evanston is the body of cockadoodle don't. Oh. So tonight, I'm looking forward to being the body of cockadoodle do. Thank you.
No one else is asking to speak for the first time, so we go back to Councilmember Reed with 2.5 minutes left.
I'll leave it there, Councilman. I had thought of a bunch of Rooster and Tyrone puns, and I'm not going to leave. So thank you for providing that levity, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussions, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
I won't be smart, yay.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Cockle-doodle-doo.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
With 9 voting in favor and none voting against, the City Council is fully unified around Tyrone's cause, and Ordinance 22-0-23 is passed. We'll be back here for action in 2 weeks, so prepare your puns, I suppose. This brings us to call of the wards. Councilmember Hadakaris.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Kelly.
We have a Northwestern University City meeting sorry, just wrote it down. One moment. This Thursday at 6:30 at the Civic Center in room 2750. Again, the Northwestern University City Committee meeting, we'll have 4 of them this year, and this Thursday. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Director Ogbo was a great help in passing that ordinance. Second Ward meeting tomorrow has been canceled for this time. I will be attending the redistricting meeting, and more information to come. It has been listed on the website. Thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Yes, Third Ward office hours this coming Thursday, March 2nd at Brothers K from 7:30 to 9:30. Thank you.
Councilmember Nusma.
Fourth Ward office hours will be Tuesday, March 7th, 7 p.m. at Robert Crown. I'm sorry, that's the ward meeting. Tuesday the 7th at Robert Crown. Office hours will be Saturday, March 11th, 10 p.m. God, it's getting late. 10 a.m. Please join me for coffee and make sure I'm fully awake at Berry Pike Cafe. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, so I've been working with staff and in Ebenezer AME Church on a follow-up to our mobile DMV event that we held back in October at Fleetwood, which was a success. And so we're bringing mobile DMV back on March 18th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At Fleetwood Jourdain, and then we've added the Senior Resource Fair event just as for a refresher. People will, and this is open to all ages, in particular the mobile DMV event, but the whole event is open to all ages. With the mobile DMV, driver's license renewals, state ID cards, license plate renewals. As a reminder, no cash accepted. I know we got that thing. I know, it's not me, it's Secretary of State. No real IDs or driver license renewals for seniors ages 75 plus. Our seniors and others can expect bingo with a little twist. Chair yoga, we'll have a massage therapist there for the first few people, probably 50, let's call it, people that come to the event. And I really want to thank our businesses. We're holding a raffle to incentivize people to show up and listen to all the speakers that we have. And I reached out to Fifth Ward businesses through the email, and we have, I think, over 10 businesses that have provided gift cards and different goods for the raffle, which is great. Lunch vendors, presentations, among other things. So again, March 18th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Fleetwood Jourdain, mobile DMV or Senior Resource Fair event.
Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, on our consent agenda this evening, we passed a resolution registering the City of Evanston's support for the Bird City Initiative, and I just want to acknowledge Libby Hill's amazing work in pulling all the materials together for a pretty extensive application for us to be recognized as a bird city, and so Libby's amazing, so great appreciation.
Councilmember Reed.
8th Ward meeting, as always, last Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. This month, actually, or in March, we will be having a joint meeting with Maria Haddon of the 49th Ward. Will be discussing Howard Street and particularly the RISE grant, hopefully public safety as well. So really excited to have our neighbors from just to the south of us join us at the ward meeting. Folks across the city are welcome to join that meeting. And I know Alexi Janulius watches our ward meeting, our council meeting, so you please, let's look into this cashless policy for the mobile DM. Is Alexi our Secretary of State now? It's been Jesse White my whole life, so almost maybe everybody's whole life up here. Yeah, but certainly thank you, Councilmember Burns, for hosting that, and I invite 8th Warders to the 5th Ward to get their IDs. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, seeing nothing further to come before us, the February 27th meeting of the Evanston City Council stands adjourned.